Today, we are talking about defeating debt. And with this, I know the debt can feel overwhelming. But the good news is it's not a life sentence. This is something that you can absolutely manage and take charge of within your life. And uh, the way to do this is that today we are going to break down into clear, manageable steps so you can really take control and reduce financial stress. We are going to move on to debt is a math problem. If you downloaded the slide deck while this is still going, I'm just going to get started with all of this. So, debt is a math problem. So, I just really want to set this tone. It's a series of numbers, it's a problem to be solved. It's not a personal failure. I don't think you should view it necessarily as a personal failure if you have found yourself in debt. Many people were never taught how to manage debt. And even those that were taught how to manage debt, sometimes it really just depends on your specific situation. Just like there's different ways to learn. Some people learn better through auditory explanations, through visual explanations, through really getting their hands on and doing it. um, it's similar in that there are different ways to manage finances, and different methods are going to work for different people, and it's really about finding this solution that's going to work for you. And so that's why I say don't view debt as a personal failure. You are just in the process of figuring out how to manage these things. There are also elements to debt and credit scores. FICO, for example, in recent years under FICO 8, made changes so that medical debt did not factor into your credit score, because they realized, or they came to the conclusion that just because somebody was experiencing medical issues was not a proper reflection of their worthiness of borrowing. And so there are elements to the debt that we find ourselves in through different situations that are just outside of our control. And so this is, again, what the session is about today, taking control of that. And so we're going to cover how to understand your debt and make a plan. We're going to talk about different payoff strategies. We're going to talk about ways to free up money without extreme sacrifices. And we're going to talk about the balance between paying off debt and saving at the same time. Uh, there are so many things that feel like we have to do with our money, that we're supposed to be doing with our money. And we're going to talk about how to find this balance between all of this. And so at the end of this, you'll have some practical stress reducing strategies to start making progress today. As we carry on, so now debt is just a math problem, but math stresses me out. And so we're going to talk about the emotional toll of debt, because this also goes hand in hand. Again, it is a math problem, but it can have these personal emotions tied up into it in terms of guilt or responsibility or pressure we put on ourselves. And so stress isn't inherently a bad thing. We are all built to handle this. This is our adrenaline, right? It's that fight or flight that can kick in with stress, and that's okay. Our bodies are equipped. We have internal systems to process all of this. It's when we start talking about chronic debt, when we start talking about, or not chronic debt, chronic stress, ongoing, unrelenting stress, that it starts to take a heavier toll, not only on our medical state, but also on our mental state. And so that stress can absolutely impact our ability to make balanced decisions to propel our life forward out of the situation. It can be a vicious cycle. Next month, we are actually doing a session for Wellness for Your Wallet, where we're going to be talking more about this connection. I really think this is at the core of a lot of financial issues. They talk about we don't make logical decisions, we make emotional decisions. And so understanding that emotional aspect, how stress is connected, how we connect finances to our life and to our identities, I think is huge. And if you can master or get a handle on some of those aspects, it can really move you forward into those clear, tangible steps. And so that's why we talk about the emotional toll of debt, because it absolutely can create stress and impact that mental well-being. Avoiding it can make it worse. You know, the more you ignore it, the bigger it gets. And so we want to get you in that mindset to say, I can handle this. And we're just trying to break it down into simple numbers, because it gives you that power to handle it. Information reduces that anxiety. Nobody likes a mystery. And so the more we can uncover these things to make it simpler for ourselves, the better we're going to be for this. And any sort of progress builds momentum. And so we're going to talk about how to get some small wins going for you. And just know that you're not alone in this. There are so many people who struggle with this. And I don't want you to feel like you're the only one. 70% of millennials who make up 3/4 of the workforce, 70% of them are on a paycheck to paycheck cycle. This is very common. And so let's get into this. Let's talk about how are we going to handle the debt within our life. If you're following along with the slide deck, as I'm still working on pulling up my larger, better interface, we are going to say we are on the taking the first step, listing your debts. This is, again, we are just removing that mystery. This is just data gathering. It's not judgment. We are not attaching that emotion of, oh my gosh, I have this debt. What was I thinking when I got this? Or, oh my gosh, my life was so hard when this debt occurred. All of those things may be true and relevant, and you may feel those, but we're just going to remove those for right now and say, you know what, right now, I'm just trying to write down some numbers so I can build a plan for this. So we are going to talk about the loan types. And so when you're listing out your debt, you want to make sure you are marking down that type of debt. So whether this is a credit card, a personal loan, or an overdue account, having that view on that is going to help you determine how to prioritize which debt you're paying off. We are going to look at the total balances on your debt. You're going to look at your interest rates associated with the debt. As I said, somebody asked earlier about can you renegotiate APR on credit cards. Knowing where you're at, knowing your situation, then gives you that power to say, hey, I know that this is where I'm going. I would like to see if I can go even lower. We're going to get your minimum payments listed. And then we're going to talk about due dates. And once you have these things, you are in control. There's no more guessing. It's just, here's what we are working with. On this slide, you will see a small little Excel section. And this is where in our January webinar where we talked about budgeting, this is how we talked about listing it in that monthly sense. And so still looking at the debt that you have, having that minimum listed, having those due dates, because again, that becomes a plan for how you manage it. That recording and the template for that monthly budget are available on cafq.org/webinars. You can just have those. There are some example sheets in there. There are blank sheets in there, and it's meant to be this editable thing that you can make work for you. And again, there's a recording linked right there as well where we go through that. So that can become, once you have these things listed, this becomes how you can manage this. Moving forward, once we have all of these things listed, we then are going to talk about the debt repayment method. You say, okay, great, I've got it listed. Now what? That doesn't necessarily make it easier to pay off or give me that knowledge to say, am I doing this the best that I can? And so we're going to talk about how to tackle this. And there are two main strategies that are oftenly shared, and that is the snowball debt repayment method and the avalanche debt repayment method. And both work well. But the bigger question is, again, which one will work best for you? So with the snowball method, we are paying off the smallest debt first. This is for a quick win, and then we take that extra payment and we are going to roll it into your next debt. So if I'm paying $50 towards credit card A and I'm paying $50 towards credit card B, once I pay off credit card A, I say, okay, instead of just paying $50 towards credit card B, I'm going to take that full amount and put it towards credit card B. So it'll then be $100. And so that is that snowball debt method, is where we take the smallest balance, if that was credit card A, and then apply it the extra payment towards credit card B. I personally like this one the most because I have found that within these lives that we're tackling, having more money available to you in your month to month enables you to then have more options. So I'll talk about the avalanche method and then I'll go a little bit further into this. And so with the avalanche method of debt repayment, instead of tackling the smallest balance to free up more of that monthly liquid, you are paying off the highest interest debt. And so this is going to save more money long term. If you have overdue accounts, you want to make sure that you are contacting the creditors to set up a payment plan before they go into collections. This is where I'd say one of the bigger things is with that overdue collections piece of it, if you can avoid that going into that final stage of collections, you are going to save that hit on your credit score. You will re-enter into that payment plan and you're making those payments to handle that balance, and it will reflect more positively on your account overall. If something goes into collections and you never have something go into collections, it will have a larger impact on your credit score. If you have many things that are already in collections and another one goes in, it will have less of an impact on your credit score. Negative remarks can stay on your credit report for a longer amount of time, sometimes up to 7 years. That said, let's say I had something go into collections, I was overdue, it made the switch. And if I am making payments on that, and if I pay that balance off, that is going to have less of an impact on my credit score over time. And it may still reflect on there, but once that is paid off, it will absolutely be a lower hit on my credit score until it completely clears off after it stops reporting from that potentially 7th year. So to go back to again, between the snowball and the avalanche method, where it's doing more interest, so you're saving more over the long term. If you don't have a lot of extra money in your budget, if you are really like, hey, I was in the January session, we worked through everything, I've got this as clean as I can. If you are really not having any extra money to put towards that debt and you're still paying towards one of these methods, what I found when I calculated numbers based off some examples was that it really, without an extra payment being made, it came to the same time. It came to maybe $50 to $100 difference in that long-term overall interest difference. If you have extra money to pay off more debt, then absolutely the avalanche method is going to generally, depending on the situation, save you more money over the long-term life of that debt. That said, I know that life changes so much. When we look at these repayment plans, we're often looking at 2 to 3 years. And so I know within my own life, it changes so much within those 3 years. And that is where I would want to prioritize that snowball method, freeing up that monthly, because I don't know what new expense may be waiting out there for me. And a lot of this also goes into the savings versus debt conversation as well for what we can prep ahead of time. But just to say, I usually find if I can free up some of that monthly to give myself more options, that is where I really view financial success. It's not being stuck in one situation. And so having that monthly a little bit extra to then say, okay, now I'm going to put some of this towards savings and some of this now towards my extra debt is a great way to handle that. For finding this extra cash, we want to do this without major sacrifices as well. I know there are a lot of different teachings on how to manage finances. I don't believe in the conversation of avoid all of your coffees at the shops or only eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch every day, because and if you want to do that, in no way am I faulting that. Live your life. I'm not here to tell you how to lead it. I am just saying that there's a life to be led with joy and intention. And if you are limiting yourself to such an extent that you are not enjoying it, it's going to be harder to stick with these plans overall. And so that is where you want to find ways to cut expenses without those major sacrifices. A lot of this also comes into priorities. And so on this slide, you'll see some listed. If you were to take anything away from this and to just start moving things forward, really say, what is one expense each month that I can either cut entirely or reduce? And then can you consistently take that extra amount and put it towards one debt? As long as you're making those minimum payments, at least on everything, can you take just that little bit extra and put it towards one debt specifically? And so with ways to find that extra cash, maybe you can negotiate bills. This could be internet, this could be insurance, this could be your subscriptions. This is where I'm such a proponent for public libraries. I know through my own public library, for the Algonquin Area Library, Algonquin Area Public Library District, they offer different services like Hoopla, like Libby, like Canopy. These are all streaming services that I can just use my library card and I can check out movies, TV shows, different media values that I am then able to cancel my other subscriptions and save those plans, save that money in a monthly basis. So if I have 3 streaming services that I'm able to cut, that could potentially be $30 to $40, especially as the prices continue to rise. Other ways we can find some extra cash. This is a great time within tax refunds or bonuses that may take place towards the start of the year, or side hustle income for extra debt. Using the budget template guidelines that we had, it was saying, we really want to plan for our actual income, not our if come, the money that we're not sure if it's going to be there or not. And so some of that side hustle money, if we say this isn't a guarantee that we're going to have a set amount, then we should really focus on, making sure we can make everything work within what we do have. And then that extra money becomes just gravy that we can apply towards our savings goals, our debt goals. And so having that side hustle can be a great way to tackle some of this debt. And I would say another thing we can do to find extra cash, and this may seem a little odd, but setting up some of those auto payments can help you find extra cash if you are someone who finds yourself behind on your payments often, or you are just waiting till the last minute and potentially you are incurring fees or charges for late payments. If you can get on a cycle where you have the money accounted for, you know that it's going to be there for making that payment, getting it set up with automation is going to help you avoid those late payment fees. And then that money itself that you may have been consistently trying to find extra money to pay off can then instead go toward your debt. With credit card debt, I also want to give this tip of avoid the minimum payments where you can. Credit card debt is one that I do think is beneficial to prioritize, not only because of the higher interest rate associated with it. If we are making those minimum payments, it can take years and years, well beyond what many would think would be normal, to pay off that debt. And so yes, we want to make at least the minimum payment, but I would prioritize credit card debt within this because not only is it the highest interest rate, but it's one of the larger impacts on our credit score as well, which is the revolving credit. This is within 30% of our FICO credit score. We're going to talk about credit scores a lot more in another session coming up. But 30% of your FICO credit score is keeping your balances on revolving debt, like credit cards, 30% or less. So if I have a credit card for $1,000, I want to keep the balance $333 or less, and that is going to positively reflect then in my credit report, in my credit score. And so that is where we can find some of the extra cash. Moving along, as we talk about balancing debt, payoff, and savings. Last month, we talked about simplifying savings, and we talked about emergency funds within this. There can be a mindset of all or nothing, that, okay, well, if I can't have this big emergency savings fund, why am I even bothering starting with this? And this is why I would encourage you, small steps make real progress and make real growth. And so with emergency funds, don't view it as like, how am I supposed to save 6 months of expenses? Pick a smaller amount. I usually recommend starting at 400 because of the statistics saying that X amount of people are not able to cover a $400 emergency. And you say, you're going to get yourself out of that statistic, and you are going to be one of the people who can handle a $400 emergency. And then from there, build it to 1,000. And from there, build it to 1 month. And just keep finding ways to say, I have this covered within this debt, until you get to that 3 month, to that 6 month, if you so choose to do, and understand that it's going to take time. But by prioritizing having an emergency fund, you're going to be able to avoid extra debt in the future by then needing to rely on credit cards. This can be really dangerous because then when emergencies happen, you may find offers for 0 interest credit cards for emergencies, but those can often come with some strict guidelines about payment methods. And if you don't have it paid off in full, you're going to be charged with this higher interest rate from the beginning of the credit card itself, which can turn into even more money. And if you didn't have this built into your budget already of making these extra payments towards a credit card, then you just find yourself further stretched across all of your dollars. And so starting with the small emergency savings, if you are facing a lot of debt, then we start looking at the other savings goals that you have and saying, am I saving for a vacation? Am I putting more towards vacation than I am towards this debt? And understanding the risk that goes with it. Again, you've got different priorities. If these trips are happening, then you want to make sure that you are prepared in some extent, because again, the alternative is that it typically then rolls over into a credit card. And so we really want to avoid just this debt or this extra spending going towards those credit card balances. Moving on, we're going to talk about automating a little bit further, consolidating, and just really staying on track. Setting up those auto payments can be huge. And again, if you know that it's going to be around the same amount each month, having that covered within the budget just reduces that stress, knowing that, hey, I know that my debt payments are going to be paid. Often when I talk to our branch managers here at CAFCU, I say, if you had one piece of advice to give, what would you recommend? And many times people have come back to me and said, with your bills, you do not have to wait for that due date to make that payment. That once you have the money, just make the payment, get it cleared out of the way. And that way you don't run that risk of carrying a balance, of not paying it in full, of not having the money later on, that it's just taken care of and you're moving on with your life. And so making those payments early when you have the money available just frees you from that. And if you can set up the auto payments, that can further solidify that. Within auto payments, I also talk about splitting payments on a bi-weekly schedule. This way, you're paying the interest off faster, you're paying the principal down faster, you end up making an extra payment during the course of the year. And so all of it just works towards you. And within your paycheck, it feels like less of a reduction because you split it between two paychecks if you're available with that biweekly schedule. Additionally, you can consider consolidating credit card debt. With this debt, if credit cards are around, a high retail credit card can be anywhere from 25 to 30 something percent interest. And so consolidating this into a personal loan that you might find anywhere from 8.99 to 15% potentially is still going to save you a lot of money. It also becomes a fixed amount that you're paying each month, so you don't have to worry about that changing. It really is just going to depend on the debt you're paying and the interest rates, the minimum monthly payments that you have. But it absolutely is possible for you to save not only over the life of the loan, but also in that month to month. And freeing yourself up from those payments then enables you to take the money you were already paying and put it towards that savings goal, that debt that you have. So absolutely consider consolidation within this. If you have overdue accounts, still get in touch with those creditors, especially before they escalate. Many creditors will offer hardship programs. If they say, hey, we are able to clear this debt all right now, if you're able to pay 80% of it instead of the full 100, make sure that you get that in writing, that it's mailed out to you before you make that payment, just to make sure that you are covered. And additionally, if you are not able to make that 80% payment all at once, you can say, hey, I'm just not in this place right now. Do you have another option available? And sometimes they may be able to even take it lower or to negotiate that then payment plan that works within your schedule. Again, it's just about having that plan, and having this budget enables you to know your plan for what's happening. Especially credit card management's on here. We want to avoid adding new charges while paying off debt. Most scoring models for FICO go under FICO 8. One of the newer models is FICO 10T, and that T stands for trending data. This is not widely used yet, but this still just shows how FICO is evolving and what they're considering. And that T for that trending data is saying that they are looking a little bit more closely at how debt changes in a brief amount of time. So if you consolidate your debt and you free up your credit cards and then you put a lot of charges back on that credit card balance, then that is the trending data that they are going to consider when determining your score. And so by, again, healthily managing this, knowing exactly what you're using your credit cards for within spending and saving, then you are going to put yourself in a better position for a higher score. And really avoiding those missed payments, because that is the largest percent, that 35% of your FICO credit score. Again, we're going to talk about credit scores a lot more in future sessions. But that missing the payment is, again, one of those big factors that can stay on your report for up to 7 years. Again, if you never miss a payment, it'll have that larger impact. If you've missed many payments, it will have less of an impact for another one, and that does have less of an impact over that course of time. And so again, just moving into this idea of, if we were to cut one expense this month, can you reduce the subscription? Can you pack a lunch once instead of eating out, if that's what you typically do? Impulse purchases are a big one. Our attention span and these dopamine rushes that we seek out can lead to a lot of impulsive decision making, especially when it comes to finance. And so if we can put the pause and say, hey, can I wait a week? Can I wait a month? And then if you would normally make that, if you were in the habit before of making that purchase, seeing that if you were to take that money and put it towards your debt, and then just moving on, how that might benefit you. And really just applying that savings to a credit card payment, to that overdue bill, to whichever debt you are prioritizing within that savings, within the snowball versus avalanche. Again, the big thing to remember is that small steps create big progress. It may take a minute, but time is your best friend when it comes to personal finances and just small, consistent habits and efforts. So for keeping this momentum going, check out some of those resources. We are going to email out some additional things for everybody. And so that is everything I had to speak about today within the slide deck. I do have that I'm available for some Q&A right now. And so let me see if I can read this within my phone, which I'm doing this off of. Becky, thank you so much for sharing all of these details. Welcome everyone from Chicago. We have people register for these sessions from all across the country. I've had people register for sessions from Puerto Rico before. It's fantastic. It's fascinating to see. It's, again, this idea that we're all in this together and that we're here to help empower that financial success. I'm going to stick around to see if there are any questions. Thank you again. Yes, Becky, great point. Becky, always so helpful in these. If you like the session, if you are interested in more financial wellness resources from your employer, I would say get in touch with Becky Hilton and she can start to facilitate that conversation. What we do for our employer partners is free. There's no cost to this partnership. We just say, hey, we're CAFCU, we're making these resources available. Are there personal, so we had a question, are there personal loans available with competitive rates? Yes, we do look at the country nationwide for our rates, because we're not just located in one area, we do have branches all over. And so we try to stay very competitive across the country. If you go to our main website, cafcu.org, if you're looking at the desktop view of this, I think this was one of the greater things about CAFCU, and it's sort of this mindset behind us, is that we are trying to be as transparent as we possibly can. Becky, again, with all of the links, thank you. But we make our rates very visible. If you go to cafcu.org for our desktop website, and at the very top, you will see a rate section, and we will have everything listed. A lot of our rates are adjusted monthly. Some of our real estate lending rates are adjusted daily. And so we are trying to make that as transparent so you can see where we're at, what works for you. I know that when I try to look at some other financial institutions, it can be a real challenge, or they're asking me to share a lot of information just to see some basic rate info. And that's where I really appreciate that we just make it available right off the bat. Becky says, yes, there are discounts for new members as well, and members of our select employee group. So we have a new member discount currently. So if you're not a member with CAFCU, we can take an additional 0.25% off certain types of loans. And that is available on our website as well for different info. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. And hopefully I see you on next month's session for Wellness for Your Wallet.